So let's take a look now at John Winthrop, and through him a little bit at Roger Williams as well. John Winthrop, I think, is a fascinating character. You might not agree, but I find him a fascinating character just because he held together this group, this sort of fractious, zealous group that came over and really they were the successful colony. Following that model that. The ideas that Smith advanced as far as preparation, they had Smith to rely on as far as recommendations. They had some news of what had gone on with the Plymouth colony, so they did it right. They had all the people that they needed to fit all the roles that they needed, and they were a smart bunch. The witch trials aside, that was mainly the second generation of folks. But they were a smart bunch, and Winthrop, I think, was the smartest among them. And he served as either governor or deputy governor during his whole. I think there were maybe only 4 or 5 years that he wasn't either governor or deputy governor of the colony during his lifetime over here. He was a lawyer, and he was a Puritan member of Parliament. As I said, the Puritans were politically engaged because they sought to change the church from within, as opposed to the Pilgrims, who were not politically engaged and sought to sort of escape from the Church of England. But he saw what he was trying to do politically in England as not being fruitful. And so he sets forth with this group and this idea of establishing the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and really is instrumental in its success. I mean, he saw the colony, double, triple, quadruple in size, almost, within a few years of its establishment, from a few hundred, from 400 to 20,000. By 1649, by the time of his death. I think it's important to note that he is someone who he allowed radical change to take place. And by radical change, I mean change that, by any definition, is radical. I mean, democracy, separation of church and state, civil liberties and civil rights. He's instrumental in making sure that all of these things happen in the colony, but at the same time, he does so through very conservative means. I mean, he controls what goes on. He's not a dictator because he allows change to occur, but at the same time, he controls that change, and we see that with the way that he deals with Anne Hutchinson and later and with Roger Williams, because he sees them as threats to slow progressive change. He sees them as too radical. He sees them as possibly bringing the wrath of the king down on them for various reasons, as well as breaking up the heterodoxy of the religion. And it's very important to them at the time, even though they're separating from the Church of England, they don't believe really in sort of our secular view of religious freedom. They believed in religious freedom for their religion. Their version of Protestantism, Puritan Protestantism, is what they believed in. Congregationalist religion is what they believed in. And they had very specific rules and dogmas and doctrines, and they protected those. And that was part of the way that they established unity. And one of the reasons that they had to, or that Winthrop felt like they had to, get rid of folks like Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams. What we look at from Winthrop are a couple of things. One is the piece from the Arabella, which includes the city on the hill quote, which I think is extremely important to our understanding of how the Puritans saw themselves. They saw themselves as divinely elected. They saw themselves as a group that was there on a mission, really, to prove that their idea of religion, their way of life, was the best way and the way that served God the best. And they knew that because of the situation in England, that they were going to be followed very closely, because this was sort of pre-Glorious Revolution. This was, pre the Puritan Revolution in England, and things were really, really hot at that time for political struggle. So this group who was going out to sort of set their own course, he knew that they were going to be looked at as an example, and their success or failure was going to be assigned to either the Puritans or the Royalists as to the feasibility of this sort of thing happening. The journal itself, I think, is fun to read. There's a lot of things in there that really give you an insight into who Winthrop was, and also sort of, as we're going back to the idea of the Puritan imagination, the way he sees the world, specific incidences that he connects back with biblical allusions. It emphasizes the importance of the diary and the journal to the Puritans, that they are constantly reflecting, they're constantly explaining things as to how they see it and how that works in their particular worldview, religious and otherwise. And it reinforces again through his discussion of Williams and Hutchinson the importance of containing this concept of Puritanism, as keeping religious heterodoxy intact as sort of a central cultural signifier that unites all of the Puritans together. Specific things to focus on in that reading, the ways that God's will seems to be revealed, the events that take place that he focuses on indicate whether, and how he writes about them, indicate whether he feels God is pleased or God is displeased with certain people at certain times. There are signs, just focus in on that. The events that he records, why does he record those particular events? Winthrop introduces us to a very interesting character in Roger Williams, who has some very specific disagreements with the way things are done in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He's originally hired to be a preacher in one of the major churches in the colony. He loses that job fairly quickly because he's so outspoken. He's a real rabble-rouser, and probably not the easiest person in the world to get along with. Although you see pictures of him, I encourage you to look up Roger Williams and see pictures of him. He looks like such a happy, jovial fella. And Sarah Vowell wrote a really cool book called The Wordy Shipmates, which I don't know if I've included that in the book review choices, but I should, because it's a really cool book, and it focuses in on Williams and Winthrop and gives you sort of a sense of who these people were. They had some very specific problems with how things had been done and were being done in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He's very much a proponent of the separation of church and state, which, of course, the Puritans were for, but he is for to a much more radical degree. As I maybe said earlier, that he really would have fit much more in with the Pilgrims, the separatists, because he really wanted to focus on spirituality and not really have anything to do with civil government at all. And he also disagrees with this idea of religious heterodoxy, because he does believe that religion and belief is very personal, and that because he believes a certain way and believes in that way strongly, he also respects the rights of others to believe differently. He's going to say they're wrong, but he respects their rights to believe differently. One of the most interesting things about Williams is his key to the language of America, which is his attempt to understand and to convey the language of the Native Americans around him. And I think it displays an incredible mind, very articulate, very practical. It's written in a way, it's very clear to see the way he's setting it up. He's putting it in practical situations. He's giving us translations. He's giving us dialogue and situations as well, which is a really interesting way to put these ideas across. And I encourage you to read that section, because it's really pretty cool what he's trying to do. So back a little bit to John Winthrop. Why do we read John Winthrop? Not just because I like him, but because he really is considered to be the first great man of American history. a lot of the roots of what we consider American government, American politics, American point of view really go back to John Winthrop in a lot of ways. In my mind, he's really the precursor to a lot of our founding fathers.